Okay, now we're going to go into some geometry. Hopefully, you're tracking me here. 9, the number 9 has been said to be the number of completion, a sacred number for a lot of reasons, and I'm going to quickly try to explain that to you. 9 encodes both phi and pi. Those are two transcendental numbers, and they form vortex mathematics, or vortex technology. They form a spiral. The root word of spirit is spiral, same thing. Let's skip that one. Nikola Tesla knew this. If you only knew the magnificence of 3, 6, and 9, then you would have a key to the universe. And he's speaking of the waveform again. He was, an electric universe scientist, and so he opposed atomic theory, and I agree with him. Is that atoms and particles really only exist in our minds. They don't actually exist in nature. But what does exist in nature is the waveform, or waves. So follow me here. If you take a circle, the one on the left here, and you divide it, which means to create an angle, your first division is going to be 180 degrees. You split it right down the middle. If you continue to split the line you just drew infinitely, every single, as long as you do it bisymmetrically, as long as you split every single line right down the middle, that's called converging into a singularity. You can do that infinitely, and every single angle that you create, the numbers of that angle will always add up to 9. So nature's telling us something here. Like, this is a universal. It doesn't matter what size the object it is. It always works this way. So what this is doing is actually, if you were to map this, take that circle and make it a sphere, so it's 3-dimensional, and you take the energy and you take all the energy from the outside and you go into a singularity, infinitely small, and you were to map that, it would actually move in a spiral inward. And so 9 encodes that. I'll explain this to you. So, these are all angles that are bisymmetrically split, and you can do this infinitely. So 9 and 0, if you add them, is 9. 4 and 5 is 9. 3, 1 and 5 is 9. 2, 7 and 0 is 9. 2, 2 and 5 is 9. 1, 8 and 0 is 9. 1, 3 and 5 is 9. Doesn't matter how many times you do this, it'll always add up to 9. 9 encodes vortex mathematics, or the spiral. Going back, now if you were to take that same sphere and you were to go to this infinitely small point, and you were, instead of going inward, you were to go outward now. Same thing, but expanding outward. So when you hit an edge, you created your sphere, but you still wanted to expand further. Well, then you shatter that boundary and you go bigger, and you continue to do this infinitely. The way in which we can map this, you have to map this with a geometric shape. When you're going outward, it forms shapes, polygons. Polygons are shapes that fit inside a sphere where every angle is the same measurement, the same degree. So it doesn't matter how many polygons that you would create. So the first one would be a triangle. You can kind of see this in here. I have a laser pointer, but it's packed away. The first triangle there, and then you would create a sphere, right? So the one on the left, the polygon, the equilateral triangle, is 3 angles of 60 degrees. So they all have the same degrees. If you take all 3 angles and you add them, you get 180 degrees. 1 plus 8 plus 0 equals 9. And so in the next one, this one, this is a hexagon. So each of the 6 angles is 120 degrees. If you add them all up or multiply 120 times 6, you get 720. 7 plus 2 plus 0 equals 9. You can do this infinitely small, going inward, or infinitely large, going outward. What is nature trying to tell us? Nature is trying to tell us, hey, pay attention to the spiral, because it's the most efficient movement that we do. So all life, all death, all seeds, all embryos, all chemistry, they all are birth, grow, and decay in spirals. And this is the Platonic Solids, which is named after Plato. These are actually the same thing. These are Platonic, meaning that not only do they fit inside a sphere, but every angle touches the edge of the sphere and is actually the same length. Every line is the same length. So I'll just go through real quickly the bottom. Same thing, 720 degrees, 7 plus 2 is 0. 1,440 degrees. 1 plus 4 plus 4 plus 0 is 9. 2,160 degrees. 2 plus 1 plus 6 plus 0 is 9. Just edifying that same point. This is what it would look like if you were looking at it. And these are called the twin opposing vortices, which are also magnetic and electric. So the magnetic side would be feminine, and the electric side would be masculine. And this is based on Nikola Tesla, Viktor Schauberger, D.B. Larson, Walter Russell, and other electric universe scientists. We see this as the most common maneuver in nature all the time. We just don't pay attention to it. So this is just a few things where we see it. The way in which our hair grows out of our head is in a spiral. We see this in the eddies of water along the coastlines of spirals. This is the way a flower blooms. It's always creating a vortex or a spiral. Wasps and bees make their hives in a cone shape or a vortex cone or a spiral. The nostril, we have little rings inside of our nostril, and it gets narrower and narrower. And each one of those rings actually, when you inhale, the air doesn't just go in equally. It actually goes around the outside and speeds up as you inhale. Because this maneuver is the way nature has designed it. It's built into the human body. It's built into river systems. Obviously, it's built into tornadoes, cyclones. It's actually built into the way electric current undulates as well. Vortexing spirals. Obviously, we see it in water. And the work of Viktor Schauberger is incredible. If you have any interest in vortex mathematics, Viktor Schauberger was, back in the day, was actually working on machines that were, once you set them in motion, would be perpetual motion. They would continue. And a lot of people believe that he actually solved it. And some of that information has been suppressed. But when you read his work, you realize that he is totally in harmony with nature. So his science is actually much more sound than what we use today. We use an entropy-based science, which means we're constantly digging stuff out of the ground and exploding it, and then it's gone, so we have to do it again. And this is a path to destruction. This is why the earth is polluted and things like that. So vortex mathematics and the electric universe model is all about renewable energy. We also see this in fire. If you watch fire, it actually moves in spirals as well. So we see this on the smallest level. Like we see this in the human body. We see this in flowers. We see this in our hair. But we also see it in the cosmos. So this is telling you that the universe has said, this is a universal thing. We use the number 9 as the most efficient movement, vortex movement. So pay attention to it. This is actually what they call the dome of heaven, where all the stars of the night sky rise and set, with the exception of these constellations, which would be Draco, Ursa Major, and Ursa Minor. And these constellations have been worshipped for thousands of years because the ancients knew of the spiral. It's encoded in a lot of pagan traditions, and it's encoded in a lot of temples. This slide is basically just edifying that point that the way that light moves based on our perception. Okay, this is just the way that we perceive it. If you're the person on the right, you're being bathed by a vortex cone of light, and you don't see any darkness. You're literally just blasted by light. All your vision is light. But if you're this person on the left, you're actually standing outside of the vortex cone. Technically, you are still being lit up. You're actually still in light. But your vantage is different. So you're actually able to see darkness. And you're also able to see the shape in which light is displaying itself to you based on your perception. Technically, light squares itself inversely, so it moves omnidirectional. But our limited senses perceive it as a vortex cone. And based in the three-dimensional world, it is a vortex cone. And so it's just interesting to see that the human psyche, I believe, works a lot like this. So if you're the person on the left, you actually are doing shadow work because you're aware of your inner light, but you're also engaged in the places that you know you need to shine light in. Vortex, we see the vortex in the belly button of the human being. We see it it's displayed as a phi ratio or a spiral. or the Fibonacci sequence in the human body. So real quick, each joint is in a ratio to the next adjacent joint as you move up the body, like up the leg or up the arm. And each joint is going to get a little bit longer, and it's going to grow and stabilize at a ratio of 1.618. When you map 1.618, you get a spiral. So the human body is actually a vortex as well. We see this in plants. We see it everywhere. But if you were to watch a plant grow from the ground and watch it from the side, every time that it branches off, it actually branches off a little bit higher than the branch before. And that ratio of each branch branching off is 1.618 throughout the whole life of the tree. If you were to watch the same tree and you were to watch it from above and watch each leaf pop out, and then the stem will grow a little higher and the next leaf will pop out above that, the leaves don't pop out on top of each other because they're all seeking light. So they're smart, and they go, well, the most efficient maneuver that we can do is pop out just a little bit to the side. And they basically pop out in a spiral. And this is so the plant can maximize its energy based on its rooted space. It's brilliant. And this is what we do. This is what the human body does. This is the way our lungs work, the way our heart works, the way the retinas in our eyes work. It's something we should be aware of. Now, this is pretty interesting. Most people think of the solar system in a Newtonian fashion, which is where it's like a flat pancake and the planets sort of run around it, and the sun appears to be stationary. But we know that the sun is moving through the solar system at great speeds. And so this doesn't make sense to have this pancake sort of thing happening, because planets cannot go faster than the sun. So they can't actually go out in front of the sun, because the sun is actually powering the whole system. They can't go out in front of it and then come back behind it. They go out in front of it if the whole sun is moving. Okay. So Bode was Titus Bode was a mathematician and a philosopher, and he was studying at the time what would be electric current. And he came up with Bode's law, and Bode's law is actually later in life was applied to our solar system. And lo and behold, not only are harmonics that build plants and phyllotaxis and build the human body and build molecules and embryos and everything else, the same exact system works in the solar system. So the spacing of our planets, the first 7 actually, can actually be verified with Bode's law, which is a law that we also verify with the movement of electric current. So this is why the electric universe model is pretty damn sound. Here is this is the way we would sort of explain this. Bode's prediction based on his math, 0.4 for Mercury in a ratio from the sun. And then the actual observation by astronomy, current astronomy, 0.39, pretty close. Venus, 0.7. Actual observation in astronomy for Venus, 0.72. Earth, 1.0, 1.0, right on. Mars, 1.6, 1.52. So on and so on and so forth. Now, it drops off after the 7th planet, and this has always been like, why? What's going on? It's because nature is a harmonic. And that's what all of these concepts that I'm talking about, by the way, they're all somewhere found in my book. So the book is called Sun King because I talk a lot about the harmonics of nature as well as how it affects our consciousness. So these harmonics change when you get to the 8th planet, because it's a lot like music where you have an octave, and then when you hit the 8th note, technically the first note and the 8th note are the same note, but 1 octave higher. So there, things change a little bit. I don't have time to go into that, but we see the harmonic of nature exhibited everywhere throughout the universe. We see it in cloud formations. This is interesting. We see it in the way water moves through the gills of a fish. So water changes speed as it rushes through the gills of the fish, and as it exits, it actually comes out in these little tiny spirals and hugs the body of the fish. It does this to oxygenate the fish, but it also does this to help the fish move through the water, because those little bubbles act as this little barrier so that they can sit in extreme powerful currents and sit still with very little energy. So it's the same principle that the plant uses to gain sunlight, but the fish uses it for movement. And we use it too throughout our entire life. We see it in hurricanes. We see it from the smallest to the largest. We see the spiraling vortex in our own galaxy. So why are we not taught this in science class? Why is nobody teaching vortex mathematics? Why did I not learn this in school? It's even in our DNA, the smallest things that you can possibly imagine. So these are cone cells, hence the name cone. It's a vortex cone. These cells are piezoluminescent, which there's only two places in the body where this happens: in the retina of the eye and in the pineal gland, which we call the third eye. Piezoluminescence means that the gland actually emits light on its own through electric current, and it also absorbs light. So these cells are very unique. They always work in spirals. They form in the shape of cones. Why is this? Very interesting. So the pineal gland is said to be the seat of the soul, and this is why you'll find it in very, very old and ancient architecture and spiritual traditions. It's often hidden or subverted, but this is actually the staff of Dionysus, and it's referring to a pine cone on the end of a staff. And you have to ask yourself, well, why would they just put a pine cone on the end of a staff? What's significant about that? Well, we get the word pineal gland from the root pine, pineal. It's a cone. And so these ancient people knew about the power of consciousness as the human body, as the temple of God. So a lot of people don't like to use the word God or whatnot, but whatever your spiritual tradition is, all reality occurs within you. And so there is a sort of harmonic convergence, which I believe is in the pineal gland. And so it was worshipped worldwide for thousands of years. And we see it in temples all over the world. This is just one example. This is Angkor Wat, called the Temple of Light. And they have these cone shapes all on it. Coincidence? No, I don't think so. This is the staff of the Pope with the pine cone on it. What symbolic meaning are they trying to show us? This is actually the Vatican itself. This is the courtyard on the backside of the Vatican. If you guys have ever been to St. Peter's Cathedral, it's amazing. It's one of the largest structures in the world. It's actually a Hermetic temple. There's a great book, Robert Laval, fascinating. The whole thing was built as it's the largest sundial in the world. And so you have to ask yourself, why do they have this massive pine cone? Like, you could choose anything in the world. Why a pine cone? Well, this pine cone is like 18 feet tall, and it sits at the center of this courtyard. They're basically telling you that they know. And this is actually ancient Sumerian etching or relief, and he's holding a pine cone, and he's got angelic wings. This is what people will call the Anunnaki. I mean, it doesn't matter to me if you believe in that or not, but they're basically, displaying a symbolic angelic being holding a pine cone. So what is the power? Why would this be in there if it wasn't significant? This is actually another version of Dionysus. The staff has a pine cone on it as well. This is also eventually where we get our medical symbol that we see all the time today, where you have the two serpents, Kundalini going up the staff and wings opening up, and oftentimes a solar disk with wings or a pine cone. So my point is that the solar system is moving in a vortex, cone, or a spiral, and so is everything else. This is actually the same book, Newton's drawing of a very famous comet when he was alive. He compiled data from other astronomers all over North Africa, Europe, and a little bit of Asia, and he compiled all their data and put it together in his magnus opus, and he drew it, and he did all the math. And I'm just pointing out, it's a two-dimensional drawing, but it sure looks like a vortex cone to me. So again, the philosophy, mathematics is a language, it's a number that we should hold reverence for, but understand that also it's easily manipulated just like any other language. More harmonics of the sun and the moon. So the sun's radius is 432,000 miles. The moon's diameter is 2,160 miles. Half of 432 is 216. So we know there's a relationship right there, that they're in communication with each other. They hold some sort of balance and harmony, just simply by the numbers. And then if you were to add up 4, 3, and 2, well, it equals 9. If you were to add up 2, 1, 6, and 0, it equals 9. So I don't think there's a coincidence there. And then, ironically, if you were to square 432, It just so happens to be the speed of light, 186,000 miles per second. All have a digital root of 9. This is what it looks like, the Fibonacci sequence in artistic form. These are never-ending spirals, but you can also infer squares in here. See, so this is what the Leonardo da Vinci's famous drawing of the I forgot the name of it. Vitruvian Man, thank you. You know, he's squaring the circle. He's got his arms out, and one of them is fully enclosed in the circle, and the other one is fully enclosed in the square. And the whole drawing was built off of the Fibonacci sequence. So he's just showing you in an incredibly creative way that the cubic waveform, so the cube and the circle, are the symbolic manifestations of creation itself. These are actually individual people's urine streams. Notice that they move in spiraling vortex cones. The icon of all, the greatest icon of the spiral is the nautilus. The way in which these shells form move in the same 1.618 ratio, this harmonic. Now this is cymatics. Cymatics is where you take sand or water or some other liquid and you put it onto a plate that resonates with sound. So electric current is run through the plate, and then they play either dissonant tones or harmonic tones. And it's just amazing that nature has decided to, when you play harmonic tones at different frequencies, that they form, symmetrical patterns. Like, they're very organized. So these are all different Hertzian tones, but they're not disorganized. When you play a dissonant tone, they get disheveled, and so what this is telling you is that the way in which sound moves as a wave moves in a spiral, and when you hone that spiral at certain frequencies, it creates artwork, beautiful artwork. These, to me, remind me of what we would call a chakra. So if the energetic systems of the body, the kundalini or the serpent energy or just the way in which you breathe, are working harmonically, then your energetic spheres are going to be working harmonically. And when they're not, they're going to be dissonant. And so one interesting way to look at this is 432 hertz on the left and 440 hertz on the right. If you look at the right, you notice that it's a little bit, it's not as pretty as the one on the left. It's not as balanced, right? It's not as geometric. It's not as symmetric. And we typically hone our current symphonies to, I believe it's the oboe, my dad would know, to A440 and not A432. So we're just 8 hertz off of being right in the heart chakra, And there's been a lot of talk of musicians from the European tradition that would say when they, like Stradivarius, when he would make a violin, he would actually say he could tune it to this frequency because it was so harmonic, saying that his ear and his body could detect this frequency. Walter Russell, again, mediocrity is self-inflicted, genius self-bestowed. And if you guys think I'm crazy and you don't believe any of this stuff, I gotta quote Friedrich Nietzsche. And those who were seen dancing were thought to be insane by those who could not hear the music. Mm-hmm. I hope you guys can hear the music, because my whole point here is to inspire this type of thinking. So you'll kind of go down your own research path.